Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is just eat meat, and that's what you should do. But if you're hiking or road tripping or stuck at work and you want something nutritious that is just meat, fat, and possibly salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. I like this product not only because it is pure meat, but also because I really want the carnivore market to thrive as well. The more we support meat only products, the more people will make meat only products, and this will bring this into the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to check out, then take a look and use my discount code HTC to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey everyone, we're back with another episode of the How to Carnivore podcast and YouTube series. We've got Dr. Anthony Chaffee with us again, the plant-free MD. Dr. Chaffee, how's it going?
Doing well, man. How are you?
Very good, thank you. You're looking very tanned and relaxed from your time in southern WA.
Yeah, it was nice. So just out in the sun every day, and actually had a weekend off, which was rare.
First time in a while.
Yeah.
Very good. So the topic for today is coffee, tea, and caffeine. And most people who jump in our carnivore challenge, they're very hesitant to give up the coffee.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious why. But we've discovered that last 5 or 10% makes a huge difference. So why is it so important to remove coffee when you're doing carnivore?
Well, I just think it's just one of the other things that are not as optimal, and that you should think about removing. I mean, at the end of the day, this is sort of an elimination diet. You're eliminating out a lot of things that aren't adding benefit to your life or maybe detracting from your health. And I think coffee is definitely one of them. It's a bean, and a bean is a seed. That seed is a plant's baby, and everything protects their babies more than anything. And so you'll generally find that in the beans and seeds, nuts, etc., that this is where you find the highest concentration of different toxins. And so coffee is no exception. I think that's why you have that bitter taste, is because there are chemicals in there your brain is recognizing, like, hey, this is not good for you. That's why it gives that strong bitter taste that you wouldn't naturally want to say, like, oh wow, that tastes great. If you're just sort of picking around plants or something to eat in the wild and you're starving, you get that horrible bitter taste, you're not naturally going to gravitate towards that. And so I think that's a survival mechanism, that we recognize harmful chemicals as tasting bad, as giving a bad reaction. I think we should listen to that. And so coffee is in that category. It has that sort of harsh, bitter flavor. And I think that's because of these different chemicals in there. And there's a number of different things besides caffeine. A lot of people will think that it's just the caffeine. And so they'll drink decaf, which is fine, but there's 150,000 other chemicals in coffee as well. It's not just the caffeine. And in fact, I think it's probably better to do the other way around, that if you're trying to come off coffee but you still like the caffeine, you're trying to get off that, you can actually you can just stop altogether, or you can use caffeine pills, which are much cheaper anyway. You have like a bottle of 200 of those things. It costs as much as a cup of coffee does.
Yeah.
So you can have that if you just want that caffeine kick, and then you get the chemical that you want, as opposed to the 150,000 others that come with it. And then you find, that actually maybe you feel better without it. I feel much better without it. I have much better and more consistent energy throughout the day if I don't drink coffee or take caffeine. I may feel better for those first few hours. I'm just buzzing off the wall and have a lot of energy and very productive. But after that, I feel pretty gross. I feel like I'm coming off a drug, and I am, and so you sort of withdraw and feel just gross, and you have worse energy throughout the day after that. So I find that it's really not worth it to me to take something like that, because it slows me down for the rest of the day.
100%. What about tea? Are we putting it in the same category as coffee?
Yeah, I mean, it depending on the tea and depending on how it's prepared, it may or may not be any better or worse than coffee, but there's still going to be things in there that the plant uses to defend itself, these defense chemicals. And like caffeine is actually a neurotoxin. It was developed in order to, as an insecticide, to stop insects from eating it. Certain insects will eat this, the caffeine will kill them. So that's what it's designed for. We have a bit of a different reaction to it, And so some people like that response, but it wasn't designed for us. It was designed a long, long time ago, before people were around, in order to, you know, deter insects from eating it. So that's the thing. You know, it's not, these things aren't good for you. There are studies that look and say, well, you know, if you have caffeine, you have coffee, people, you know, tend to do better for certain markers and outcomes and endpoints. But, you know, what are you comparing? You know, you're comparing people that are, you know, eating, you know, standard sort of diet and maybe doing things in a standard sort of way. And then what are your endpoints? How are you judging success or failure, and all these sorts of things? Um, and that could be, you know, maybe there are some advantages here and there, but I think for me, from my perspective, I simply just feel better when I don't have coffee or caffeine in my system. I feel more healthy. I feel like I have better, more consistent energy throughout the day.
Mm.
And I also do notice an increase in inflammation in my body when I drink coffee. And so, you know, I tell this story, but, you know, when I was just coming back on the carnivore and I couldn't get sore. And I was like, okay, what's happening? So I put it to the test. I really tried to challenge myself, and I just kept doing sets of squats, and set after set after set. I ended up doing 32 sets of squats without being able to wear myself out. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'll just call it here, because I've been here for 4 hours and I've got things to do. And so the next day I was just like very scared. I was just like, oh my God, I'm probably going to be crippled for the next month from doing that. That excessive amount of working out, but I wasn't sore. And this really pisses people off to hear. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
all the things, this really bothers them. Bullshit, you get sore. And I'm like, okay, I don't, but, you know, like, try it yourself. You'll see, you know,
Yeah.
those defensive chemicals, those inflammatory factors that exist in plants that actually cause that pain, swelling, and inflammation, stiffness. And because we've been eating this stuff our whole life, that's just normal for us. And that's just what we notice. And so we think, oh, that's normal. You work out, you get sore. That's it. Well, no, actually, that's not it. You know, because animals in the wild, they're running around escaping. If they're just crippled and around the next day, well, they're getting eaten the next day.
Mm.
Gotten away once, but they're done now. And so that doesn't really work. You know, if you eat something that makes you feel like that, makes you feel bad, makes you feel stiff and uncomfortable and painful, you're not going to go back and eat that thing again, right? Unless you absolutely have to. So we're just sort of trapped in that. We don't realize what's happening. We don't realize that that's not normal. We don't realize that that doesn't have to be. So I saw that, and I saw that I wasn't sore, and I really overdid it, and I felt great. And so I was like, great, I'll go hiking. I went and played rugby, and the next day still not sore, you know. And 2 days after that, normally you peak in your inflammatory cycle for your delayed onset muscle soreness is 48 hours. And so this is now 2 days later. I'm not feeling sore. I'm feeling great. I met a friend for coffee, and I was like, okay, can I have coffee? What does this do to my body? I had 1 cup of black coffee, and within 20 minutes, I could actually feel my body getting more and more stiff and more sore. My hamstrings tightening up, my back starting painful. I'm like, okay, like what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? I could feel it building up in real time. And then I was sore for the next 2 days. You know, nothing close to what I would have been if I was eating a normal diet. I would have been in trouble. I don't think I would have been out of bed for a month if I was eating a normal diet. Because I've done things like that. I've overdone it on leg days. Not even half of what I did that day, maybe a third. And well, a little more than a third. But you know, I've done crazy heavy leg workouts, and I've really overdone it. And I've just been absolute agony for 2 weeks, like actually 2 weeks. And I was just in so much pain. And so I was like really afraid that was going to happen, and it didn't, you know?
Yeah.
So then, you know, I drink coffee and I'm sore again. I'm like, okay, well, that's not what I want to do. And that's not what I want to have. And I was working with a doctor here in Australia, and he's an orthopedic surgeon. And so, you know, we would work together and operate during the day. And we became friends, and we started, you know, going to the gym together. I went with him, and I was just like, okay, well, you know, just go through and do my lifting schedule with me. And so I was like pushing him. He wasn't a guy that would really normally work out all that much. And so I was really challenging him. He's like, well, I'm operating tomorrow, so I really don't want to like really overdo it because I don't want to be sore. And I'm like, you're not going to be sore if you do carnivore, like I'm telling you, you're not. And he was just like, he was really skeptical about that. I was like, look, just trust me. Like, it doesn't matter how hard you go today. Like, we'll push you like really hard. You do my whole workout. You won't be sore tomorrow.
Mm.
And so he was just like very, very, you just see him just sort of like looking at me like, that's full of it. And he was just like, yeah, I'm really interested. I'm really interested to see if I'm actually, sore or not tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, I'm really interested to see if you're, how pure you are,
Yeah.
because that's it. If you're actually just eating meat and water, you won't be sore, like I can guarantee that. And so he's just like, okay, all right. And you're just eating water. He's like, yeah, no, just eating water. I'm like, you should be fine. So we get the next day, we're there in the morning, and he's just like, and he's got this grin on his face, but he's just like, man, I wanted you to be wrong so bad. Like, I want to come in here and just be sore. I'm like, I told you I was sore, this, that, and the other. But he's like, but I'm not. I'm not sore. Like, you were right. Like, that's crazy. That's so crazy that I'm not sore. Halfway through the day, we're there. Everyone's sort of having lunch. I'm just, not eating anything, and he's not eating anything. But one of the medical equipment reps comes through and like got coffee for everyone and just passed around. I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. And he had a coffee, and I didn't say anything. But he's there, sort of drinking a coffee, and he sort of gets halfway through, and after a while, he just sort of looks at me and goes, yeah, I actually, I am starting to feel sore. I actually am
Yeah.
sore. And I just pointed out, I was like, what are you drinking? And he's like, damn it. That's it. And it happens that quickly. Within minutes, you'll start feeling these effects in your body. And then when you start recognizing that, you have that natural deterrence. You feel great all the time. You eat something that makes you feel bad, you're going to be naturally deterred. That's why people say, like, wow, you must have so much willpower just not eating it and stuff. Like, not really. Like, I want nothing to do with that stuff because I know how it makes me feel. I've tried it, sampled it back in. I'm like, yep, that makes me feel bad. I don't want to feel bad. I want to feel awesome all the time. And so it's really not hard at all. It's sort of self-reinforcing.
Yeah, so some people will think you're crazy, and I think that's because, well, two reasons: because they haven't experienced that no pain, no inflammation of carnivore, so they can't imagine what it would be like for that to be gone. But then also, when you are carnivore and you slip up, you notice it so much more. Like I'm the same. I can suddenly feel aches and pains in my knees or my back, and it's like, oh, where's that coming from? That's not normally there.
Yeah.
So I believe it. I've experienced it, but I understand it can be hard for some people. I mean, athletes that hear this message, particularly like midway through the season, where you would know at a rugby club, a lot of people can't run till Thursday. And they make it through a Thursday training, and they're like, yeah, I'm good to go for Saturday. And then you just fire up for Saturday and you push through.
Yeah. Well, I mean, before I was doing this, that was it. And especially when I would drink on the weekends after games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very big social part of it. I really enjoyed that. That was probably the sort of the seductive nature of it was, I had fun drinking as a
Celebrating.
teenager.
Yeah. It's a reason to drink and party. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's sort of why I chose rugby over fighting, was because fighting was awesome. I absolutely loved it, but there wasn't that same social camaraderie. Like after the game, you'd go out and you'd have drinks and all that sort of stuff. And it was just business, and people were friendly and hung out. And I was good friends with everyone, even though they were like, 10 years older than me at least. And, but it was, it was that social aspect, and that atmosphere is just such a fun environment to be in. But at the same time, like you are working that off for the next like few days. It's not until like that Tuesday practice that you are beginning to get all this stuff out of your system. I would always just, like you would almost smell the alcohol coming out of your pores on the Tuesday.
100%.
And you just think this, and that was it. You'd sweat the evil out of you. That's how I would phrase it. I'm like, oh, I got to sweat all this evil out of me. And then, after the Tuesday practice, then you start feeling good, a little better. And by Thursday, you start like, feeling better. And then on the game, you'd be ready to go. And then you just destroy your life again. And so as soon as I stopped drinking, that was different. I was feeling better the next day. And, I could go run, I could do whatever. I was like, wow, this is amazing. My recoveries were so much quicker. And that's because alcohol does a lot of damage to your body, and the rest of the stuff does too. And so that was at the same time that I sort of stopped eating all these plants and everything like that. Is when I stopped drinking as well, and just sort of I always attributed it to like just not drinking, which is a major part of it. But I never thought that the just eating meat thing played such a big role.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know lots of people who've gotten healthier by cutting out alcohol, obviously. And it's a good place to start. But you're right. Once you do that plus all meat, no plants, then it's a whole nother level. And like, I'm looking forward to more athletes doing that during the season,
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've noticed too, that, if something slips in or something like a bit of carbs, or a bit of rice, or a bit of beans or whatever, not even much, my back will kill, like you were saying, like these aches and pains, like, oh, that's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Same thing. My back is like stabbing pain for days after the last time I had rice. I didn't even have a single bite of rice. Right. I was at a restaurant, and some of the rice and beans that were sort of stuck on me, I couldn't scrape all of it off because they were smaller pieces. And I'm like, oh, whatever. And let's see what this does to me. I regret that, because it was 4 days of feeling like garbage. And, so I really don't want that. Oh, don't you miss rice? Absolutely not. No, I've never had rice that tasted better than how miserable I was after having eaten rice. I mean, like, I don't want back pain. I don't want 20 minutes to get out of bed, and I had to when I was doing that. I don't know what the hell was going on, but it was not fun. Now I have that, I have aches and pains and things like that on a minor level, just because I've played a lot of sports and battered my body in a lot of ways. And that's just the nature of things. But it's perfectly fine. It doesn't limit me in any way. I feel great all the time. It's just, I'm 43 and I've got, compressed discs and arthritis in my kneecaps. Like,
man, you got 77 to go.
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah, at least I'm pushing 30. And if, like people like, David Sinclair, like, actually get going on this whole longevity thing, we can actually start sort of reversing things. I mean, I think I'll be, miles ahead of everybody already. Yeah, we'll see. Just invest now.
Yeah.
This is your friend. By the time you're 150, you're going to be billionaire. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Let things compound. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be the richest 150-year-old going around. Dude, we should do an episode on David Sinclair and the Lifespan book. I haven't
read it yet. Yeah, but I've only seen his stuff. I haven't seen too much of his stuff, but I know he's working on this stuff. I've seen a couple of the papers he's put out that they've, making some pretty interesting breakthroughs.
Yeah. I think we should get into it. There's probably some David Sinclair fans watching this. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's doing really, really interesting stuff. I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, he obviously doesn't. It's not a carnivore sort of thing. Like Lex Friedman is, and people like that. Sinclair and others on, but you don't have to get everything right all the time. Like these different sorts of people that are luminaries in certain areas. That doesn't mean that they're right about absolutely everything. I'm not right about everything, I'm sure. And when I see that, I try to adjust and change. I'm not stuck in my ways. Certain things I'm like, no, I really think this is the way to go, and I say so. But if I find new information that really challenges that, I mean, like, I will change my mind. Like, that is not.
Yeah, that's the way it should be.
You would hope so. Yeah. And so with David Sinclair, I mean, this isn't something that he's looked into in the same depth as other people have. And it's not something that he has, necessarily seen the other side of the argument, because you do have to look for this information. It's not just being presented to you. His colleagues at Harvard are very, very much pushing the plant-based.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they're very woke at Harvard.
Yeah, and specifically the plant-based stuff. A lot of stuff. I know a number of people that got their master's in public health from Harvard, and they went in one way and came out vegan, because what you get taught there, that is what gets pushed there. and Harvard has this mentality of, because it's from Harvard, it has to be right. And so you'll notice that people that go there, it's just like, well, I went to Harvard, so that's not an argument, you know. You actually have to back it up. And Thomas Sowell talks about that in his time there, about how that was sort of the attitude. My grandparents met at Harvard, and they said the exact same thing. And that's why, like, my family, we sort of didn't do that. We had a lot of my family members. My grandparents met at Harvard. A lot of my my mom's family and cousins, they all went to Harvard. And my parents were just like, you guys aren't going to Harvard or the Ivy League schools, because they didn't want that. They didn't want these sort of programming pushed down our throats. They wanted us to be taught how to think, not what to think.
That's brilliant.
And so that was very important to them. So they didn't want us doing that. I think I would have been fine, a bit more stubborn than some people. But
yeah, I think they would have struggled to brainwash you with the plant-based stuff.
I would hope not. I'm sort of interested in doing like an MPH. I've gotten emails from them about doing like an MPH, so like Master of Public Health there, and they have a very good program, obviously, but I would wonder, A, if they'd let me in knowing, my background, and
No.
and but B, like, how these classes would go, because obviously there would be some in-depth discussions, during class time that would sort of take over the
guest lecturer, Dr. Anthony Chaffee.
Yeah, in the class. Yeah.
The truth about nutrition. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think it would be fine though. And but yeah, so Dave Sinclair, like, he's seen what he's seen, and he sort of made the decision that way. But he's looked into anti-aging and things like that.
Yeah.
Way more than almost anyone else has. So he is an expert. And sometimes when you're an expert in something, you forget that you're not, that it took you 20 years to become that. And then you sort of look at something else and go, oh, well, this is what the evidence shows, so that's what it is. And it's like, well, maybe, but you wouldn't accept that from someone else coming into your field and just saying that, because they heard a couple things, and it's like, well, this is what it is. And you're like, well, actually it's not, because you know more about that. And people forget that, like it's someone pointed this out a while ago. When you're reading a newspaper and you're just reading stories, reading columns, you're like, wow, this is interesting. Wow, look at this. Oh, look at that. And then you come across something that's in your field, and it's just like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's not because of this, this, and this. And then you go to the next one, like, wow, that's really interesting. Forgetting that they just messed that one up. What else have they messed up? Maybe they got the other ones wrong. Maybe it was just a one-off, but you don't know. I mean, people do the best that they can. Not everything's a conspiracy or an agenda, but there are conspiracies and agendas out there, especially with nutrition and food.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. People can just get things wrong. They can mean well and have all the data and support and things, and come to something. It's Thomas Sowell said, it is perfectly reasonable, and understandable for two people to look at the same piece of information and intelligently and honestly come to different conclusions. That's the best definition of being open-minded, is accepting that fact. That just because someone disagrees with you on something does not mean that they have ill intent. It just means they disagree. Like, well, I disagree with people on nutrition because I've looked at things differently. I've seen other points of information. And when I relay those points of information to people, even vegans, vegetarians who are doctors, nurses, and nutritionists, they tend to come around. I have yet to have someone who has been willing to engage in a conversation with me, and go back and forth, even aggressively, that they have not come around and seen the light. But that's okay. So I see this information and I have a different take on it because I have a different background on it, and other people do as well. But it's not because they're a bad person and they're trying to be, misleading, bastard. And I'm not either, but people forget that. Mm-hmm. As well, it says, now people can't accept that people can be in error. They think that they're in sin. It's not that, you've made this mistake, but you are a bad person because you think that. Like, that's a very, very dangerous road to go down.
100%. Yeah, I really want you to read Lifespan and kind of decode it. So I tried to read it, and coming from somebody who's done a lot of research into carnivore, I found that a lot of the sort of medication or supplements that he was recommending, like resveratrol, was to mitigate the effects of eating plants and carbohydrates. So it would be like you have a meal and your insulin spikes. Insulin causes damage and and can shorten your lifespan. I'm like, yes. And then he goes, then you take this sort of like some, and even he recommends like metformin or whatever it's called, the stuff that diabetics take. And he says, and then you can mitigate the inflammatory effects of eating the food and you can lower your insulin level. And I'm just like, okay, cool, just don't eat them.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of flicking through, try to find more. I'm like, so where does he get to the good stuff?
Yeah. That's
so, so what he's saying works, but what about the cause?
Context. Well, right. Yeah. I mean, you're treating a symptom, not the disease, right?
That's what it seems like to me, but I need you to read it.
Well, but I mean, but in that, that sort of description, that sounds like what's happening. He's saying that, insulin's bad and these things are bad. So you take these medications. Well, like Gundry is this, it's like, the plant paradox. It's like, lectins are bad, they're really bad for you. So take this medication that can, mitigate lectins.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like stop eating plants. So he comes from a background of like, hey, you should eat plants, but they're bad for you. So you have to take these other steps, like, or just don't eat them. You don't have to. You don't need them. And you guys have said clearly that these things are causing harm. You're eating carbohydrates, your insulin goes up. That's a problem. You should take this medication, or just don't eat the carbohydrates. Very simple. Skip the middleman. And so that's the thing. Like that's what I wonder is I think a lot of these youthful aging sort of techniques are going to pale in comparison to just eating properly, just eating what we're biologically designed to eat. And
correct.
I think that you'll live 120, 130 years just doing that. And then that's where you start. You start off with proper nutrition. You start off with eating a biologically appropriate diet. And then you try to find things that help you from there. But yeah, from the sounds of it, these medications are really just helping mitigate the effects of eating something we're not supposed to. And so, but I'm sure that there are other things.
Yeah, exactly right. That's just one.
That can,
but
there's some things that he was talking about, like in mice, that are actually like can actually like reverse their age and things like that in certain ways. So if we can figure that out, you have telomeres on your chromosomes, have these little molecule caps, and you sort of cleave these things off, and once you run out of that cell line dies. And so that's how you can sort of tell how long you're going to live and your metabolic age based on your telomeres and other things. And so exercise, like weightlifting, that can increase your telomeres, having growth hormone that can increase it. But like all these different sorts of things can increase your telomeres. So that's like, that's sort of reversing the aging process and things like that. And so maybe there are going to be more and more things, like cancer cells, they cap their telomeres. So they never run out. They can just go and go and go and go and go. Right. Lobsters have capped telomeres. So they just don't die of old age. Their tissues don't break down like that, like ours would. They just go, and if they don't get killed or don't die of something, they don't just die of old age. That's the idea. And so that might be interesting, figuring out how to cap our telomeres, and then you just immortalize your cells. But that could cause other problems, I'm sure, like horrible cancers probably, So, because like some cells you need turnover, right? Your skin cells, your epithelial cells, things like that. So what would happen then? You sort of immortalize these things, is that still going to have the same turnover? Is that still going to have the same, properties that they had before? But I'll leave that to them to figure out. I'll stay in my lane, because I just don't know about that stuff. But I think it's interesting. And I think you start with the biologically appropriate diet and get your body working as well as it can naturally, and then try to mess with it after that.
Yeah, 100%. Just flicking back to caffeine, I think, well, speaking from my experience, when I went to give up coffee, which I did in April, May last year, a fear of mine was that my performance would drop So I was like, oh, well, I work better when I have caffeine, and like, you know, I can train better when I have some caffeine. And like, you know, you see like, you know, a lot of really smart people, you know, they're slamming coffee all day, and athletes are taking caffeine pills and all sorts of stuff. That was a fear of mine. Look, I've discovered that it was an unwarranted fear. But do you want to sort of, do you want to expand on why that may or may not be a fair thing to fear?
Well, I mean, you're used to getting that pickup when you take caffeine, and so you feel charged, and other times and you feel, and then you come down like, oh, I'm not on caffeine, I feel bad, but that goes away. You know, like you get through the hangover period, and you get through the withdrawal period, and then you get more consistent energy throughout the day. And because your biochemistry is better, and you're able to mobilize your fat stores and make ketones, blood sugar, and glycogen at on demand, then you have energy on demand. And so the more you work, the more you push yourself, the more energy you're going to produce and burn. And we feel better when we burn more energy. That's why things like coffee and stimulants make us feel better, because we're burning more energy and we feel great. And so when you just start working out, exercising, pushing yourself on a carnivore diet or in a ketogenic metabolism, you start mobilizing more energy and you feel better. So, you know, because you're burning more energy, and that makes you want to work harder, which makes you burn more energy, which makes you feel better, which makes you want to work harder. And so it's this positive feedback loop. And so you find that people just feel really great, and they want to do more. They want to do more because they get that good feeling. And so that's why, you know, I like working out for several hours. I don't. It's not that like, oh, I feel better for having had worked out. No. I feel better while I'm working out. I feel better right then. I don't want to stop because I feel so good as I'm working out. And so you'll find that your energy levels, especially as an athlete, are much better when you're on a carnivore diet, or even just keto diet, high fat, meat based keto diet. And it's, you know, some people will take caffeine, or they'll take pre workout sort of stuff to get that spike of energy so they can go in and work out hard. I go to the gym to get that spike. You know, go to the gym, I start working out and I start producing more energy, and I feel better. You know, so if I want more energy, I start doing more, you know, and I feel better, you know. And so, you know, that inspires me to push myself and work hard, feel better as I'm doing it.
The more energy you produce, the better you feel. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Well, and then, well, the more energy you burn, right? If you're just burning all this energy, you're sitting there just teeming with energy, and you just feel like you're full of life. You can take medications and drugs to do that, you know, and people do. But, you know, if you're in a ketogenic metabolism on a carnivore diet, which you should be, you know, you shouldn't be eating a bunch of carbs and sugar, then you're going to feel like that. I mean, people can take carbs and sugar, and then they have all this energy, and they go do something, but you don't need that. If you start working out, then you'll get that naturally, and you won't run out, you won't crash, right? And you won't hit the wall. So, you know, if you're burning more energy, you feel better. You know, people just do. And that's why they chase those sorts of things. And so, you know, that's why, you know, I feel better when I'm working out. You know, when you're eating a bunch of carbohydrates, like, yeah, you know, if you haven't eaten a bunch of sugar and carbs or whatever to have that higher blood sugar, to carbo load up, to carb up, you know, this is why the classic, you know, police officers and donuts, right? Because they're working night shifts, they're doing shift work, they're feeling like crap, they're drinking coffee, they're just trying to keep their energy up, because they're, you know, just switching back and forth from day, night, evening, morning, all that sort of stuff. And they just feel like crap. And they're like, okay, we need to get some energy. So they'll eat a bunch of donuts, which has carbs and sugar, and they feel better. And they drink some coffee. Like, great, I feel good. I can attack my shift now, you know, and you know, and you know, do my job. And so that's the rabbit hole people go down, is they have to eat those things in order to feel good, to do their job, or to work out. But you don't need to do that when you're not eating carbohydrates. You know, you just start working out and you just feel better as you go.
Yeah, love it. Burn more energy, feel better, and burn your own energy, and run on ketones. 100%.
Yeah,
it's a good way to live as well. Stop trying to, you know, preserve yourself and trying to sort of rest all the time, and start doing stuff. You'll feel better.
Yeah, you do feel better, and you just get out, be active. move your body, do things outside, get some sunlight, lift things, put them back down, it's great, but it doesn't have to be lifting weights. It doesn't have to be athletics, but, join a team, join a sport, join a something, it's good environment as well. And it gets you out there, it gets you doing things, and gets you experiencing life. And, people think that it's like, well, I don't really have time to, I don't have the energy or whatever. You'll find that if you make the time to work out, that you'll actually have more energy throughout the day. You'll be more productive. Otherwise, your brain actually works better. It changes the chemistry in your brain in such a way that your brain actually works more efficiently if you're exercising. The ancient Greeks knew this. It was this scholar athlete sort of model that they tried to recreate with the Rhodes Scholarship at Oxford. That was, for people that don't know, the Rhodes Scholarship would sort of give 2 of these things a year to different countries, to sort of each country that's a member. And they get this for the top scholar athlete in your country. So give 2 of them for each country. America gets more because it's just bigger. So we get sort of like different regions split up. My grandfather was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford, and
awesome.
It was like you had to be a scholar athlete. So a lot of it, they really focus on the scholar part, and they sort of, just sort of fudge the athlete side of things if they have to, if they really want you from your academic point of view. But you have to do something. You have to do some sort of sport. So my grandfather was on the rowing team for Oxford.
Yeah, sick.
And so he ended up doing another degree there and doing his PhD there. And he rowed for Oxford while he was there. So that was it. That was the idea. And it does actually benefit you physiologically to exercise and work out. It actually helps your brain as well. So there's a significant advantage to doing these sorts of things together.
Yeah. On that point, the sort of modern perception of like, you've got to be really scrawny or overweight and hopeless physically to be smart. And then if you're really physically dominant, you got to be dumb. That's bullshit. And they definitely, they both work hand in hand. Physical exercise, discovering your body, learning how to use it, and then also using your brain and developing. So that's
well, your brain moves your body, right? And so your brain actually is in control of that, and you have your spinal reflexes and muscle and things like that. It's just as like a pianist. They're not thinking like on this note and this note and this note and this note. They're hitting 50 notes, every 3 seconds. And because they're just for like a concert pianist. And so that's not, you can't consciously think about that. That is muscle memory. You've trained your body to move in a specific way. And that's the same with athletics. You are training yourself to run, jump, kick, and move in a certain dynamic way. And in fact, it can actually take a lot more intelligence in a lot of ways, because when you're playing the piano, you're freestyling and doing those sorts of things, you're playing a set thing, you've practiced that piece. It can be extraordinarily difficult to do these sorts of things, and it is. Not taking that away from anybody, but you're not doing that while 300-pound guys trying to kill you. So like you have to, if you're on the field, you have to react to what other people are doing too. It's not just you. It's not like golf where you're just trying to hit a ball in a certain area. And even then that changes up. You're on this angle and this slope and this sun's in your eyes and this is how far you got to go. It changes what you're doing. But, when someone's competing directly against you and you have to react to those other people, it takes a lot. So you have to be very, very well trained. And that is your brain doing it. Your brain and your spine, your nervous system training you to react in different ways in different situations physically in a split-second decision. So it does take a significant amount of intelligence, and it does go hand in hand. And the thing is that people generally are quite myopic. They focus on something. So if you're in sports, you focus on sports. If you're into certain academic field, you focus on that field. And so we can just sort of get trapped in that. And obviously, if you focus a lot of time onto something, you're going to get better at it. Musicians need to practice their instrument. They need to spend hours a day doing that. Professional athletes need to train for their sport hours a day. You want to be an academic, you need to study hours a day. It's all about work. It's all about hard work. And a lot of people aren't able to put in that same amount of work in multiple different disciplines. but it does actually help.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Working on both at the same time or multiple things at the same time,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
working the same sort of discipline.
Yeah, exactly. And they can complement each other, And so you're moving your body, you're working out, and that makes your brain work better. I came across that actually at research when I was studying for my MCAS, going to medical school. And so I was still playing rugby, because that made me happy to do. And but I was studying for the MCAS. I was spending, a long time, like when I was getting like really leading up to the test, I was studying for like, 12, 13 hours a day, every day, and getting ready for this exam. But I would play rugby as well, and I would train, and I would go to the gym, for half an hour, 45 minutes every day. I would just get it done. And I found that it definitely helped me with my concentration otherwise, and helped with my energy, my mental energy, not getting as much mental fatigue, and just, ended up benefiting me academically, not just physically.
100%. All right. Thanks, Dr. Chaffee. Let's wrap there. That was awesome. Until next time.
That's good, buddy. See you then.